Oh, Hi everyone. Um, I can't see you, but I'm so happy to be here. It's 5 minutes after the hour. I'm gonna share my screen and we're gonna kick this off. If you are here for success without sacrifice, how women thrive in a demanding world, you are in the right place. Give me 1 sec and we're gonna do this. Okay. If anyone wants to write me in the chat that you can see my first slide that says success without sacrifice, that would be really helpful. You can see it. Okay. Amazing. Amazing. Hi, Susan. Thank you. Okay, let's do it. Hi, everyone. I'm Maria, and I'm so excited to be hosting this webinar. This my computer's shaking. So this content originally was what I presented at as a keynote for my alma mater, Mizzou, University of Missouri, for their Women's Alumni Group Conference. It was really fun, and I'm so stoked to be able to present it to you. And I think most of who are here were not in the room that day. So thank you for making the time to be here live, or maybe you're watching the recording right now. I don't take your presence here lightly. Everyone listening right now had to make plans to be here. You said no to other plans or meetings. You possibly organized and paid for childcare, whether that childcare is so that you can work already. You paid your internet bill. You made sure your loved ones are taken care of for the next hour. You kept yourself healthy enough to join. You made sure your work was covered or delegated to colleagues. And ladies, this is a day in the life of a woman. And it's also a lot of stuff. And I'm not even naming all of the stuff that women do on a daily basis to just kind of like keep the lights on. And this is a nod to what I have to offer today. If you are here, you are an incredible and high achieving woman. And there's a lot of demands on you, on us. And we all want to thrive despite all of these demands. And you might be able to feel a little bit of that weight. And so let's just take a breath. So breathe in through your nose and breathe out through your mouth. Yeah, you could take a few more of those as I go on. Let's just acknowledge or start by acknowledging that you've arrived. Many of you probably know, but I've taught yoga on the side for the last 10-ish years. And I often say at the beginning of class, getting here is the hardest part. So you're here, and I invite you to settle in and check in. And whether you're feeling good today or you feel like you're hanging by a thread, take another deep breath on your own. Yeah. And just thank yourself for showing up, and thank yourself for all that you had to do to get here, to take this action in the direction of taking care of yourself, of doing something to help yourself make your life a little bit easier. Oh, slide props. Okay. Why am I sitting here talking to you about how women thrive? And so a little story. Some of you might know some of this or parts of it. I grew up in Missouri in a small town. I went to the University of Missouri. I studied journalism. After graduation, I moved to New York, and I spent about 10 years in the advertising and PR industry. I'm really proud of my perseverance during this time, especially in the beginning when I was pretty strapped for cash and living in Manhattan. And of the high profile work I got to be a part of, like campaigns for cult favorite home goods. Maybe some of you guys are fans. Or other household names like Enterprise, Spotify, Jameson, Mentos, Toyota, and All Nippon Airways. Unfortunately, during that time, I became uninspired and then completely burnt myself out. I had moments of total misery, mornings I would have to drag myself to work, lots of frustration, raging acne, And one very, very embarrassing incident that I was so stressed, I actually pooped my pants twice. And it's okay. If you're laughing on your side of the screen, please do. Please laugh at me and with me. It is kind of embarrassing and a little bit sad, but it is part of my story. And it's just the part before I created my redemption, where I learned how to relax at work, create boundaries, manage and work with my mind and my emotions, and understand how and where I created the most value. Because in the time that I was constantly stressed, working late nights and weekends, and felt like I couldn't stop, I was doing a lot, but not creating my best work or the circumstances for it. When I learned to approach work differently with direction and confidence and a sense of calm, I started creating the success I was striving for with so much more ease and much quicker than I thought I could, and certainly much quicker than the old way. By the time I left advertising, I was leading a team, getting promoted faster than my peers 3 times in 4 years, which is, the ad industry promotes quickly, but this is very quick even for that industry. And asked to lead projects for my boss that no one else could. My responsibility increased significantly, and I created all this success that I'd been striving for so much. But I also was leaving the office on time every day. I never worked on weekends anymore, healed my acne, and yes, I did not poop my pants anymore. I don't think I've pooped my pants since then. Yes, a huge win. And now, as an executive coach and leadership development consultant, I teach women how to find fulfillment and success at work without making the sacrifices we think we have to make, like personal health, spending time with our loved ones, like family, or having a personal life, and time with friends to let loose and have fun. Unfortunately, when it comes to women who have experienced burnout, I'm just a data point. According to Deloitte's Women at Work study in 2022, 53% of women reported high stress levels and 46% reported feeling burnt out. That's almost half of all women. And in my opinion, way, way too many. This is a chronic issue. And remember, burnout is not just being a little bit busy. Burnout is a deeply rooted condition that affects all aspects of someone's life. And yet many high achieving women consider it the price of success. I know I certainly did. So if you feel that way, you're not alone. And it's like very, very common to believe that that's what you owe in order to get the success that you want. And here are some of the telltale signs that you are experiencing overwhelm or downright burnout. Indecision, feeling overwhelmed about everything, overthinking, lack of focus, lackluster motivation, deep exhaustion. Feel free to write me, like ME, in the chat if you've ever felt uninspired, overwhelmed, burnt out, like it's tough to focus, frustrated, etc. when you think about your work. As women, we face unique challenges. The working environment was not built for us. Women only really started going to work during World War II in the 1940s. And by this point, we were joining the men's version of it. And so I want to acknowledge 4 main unique challenges that women face, all of which may or may not apply to you. Let's start with biology. At this point of science, we are the only gender able to carry children to term in our bodies. We're also the only gender that can breastfeed. This is only 2 things, but of enormous consequence. If you know that, if you're a mom, the toll, not just on women's bodies, but also their brains and emotional and mental wellness, is massive. If we just look at that, the motherhood tax weighs on our professional progress a lot. In America, not all women are guaranteed to have paid childcare. And most that are joining this webinar, who I would kind of put in the white collar category, have just the bare minimum of maternity leave, maybe 3 or 4 months. Aside from the motherhood tax, women's bodies have a 28 to 32 day hormonal cycle, where generally each 7 days of that cycle has a different energy level, which you likely all know very well. Men have a 24-hour hormonal cycle, which has testosterone surging in the morning when they wake up and slowly tapering off around 5 or 6 p.m. and it's the exact same every single day, which mirrors the corporate 9-to-5 work week schedule conveniently, exactly to a T. Gender roles also factor heavily into the challenges we face as working women, specifically the weight of at-home unpaid work, which would be things like tidying, cooking, plan making, grocery shopping, cleaning, laundry, assumed childcare, and more. And I'm sure you could add like 5 more things to that list. And then we've got social conditioning. Women are more likely to people please and make sure everyone around them is more comfortable, even at the expense of their own comfort. Women are more likely to experience imposter syndrome. So we'll spend more time questioning ourselves, contorting ourselves to look and act professional, specifically to the male gaze, and prove ourselves. Women are more likely to take on more and more or do it all. We've watched generations and generations of women before us take on more and more. And in some ways, that's where we got to where we are now. And we can appreciate those sacrifices made by women to progress us forward, even as we look forward to better and more sustainable ways. There's also an unseen emotional weight and the expectations of that. My 2-year-old daughter was screaming for me downstairs as I worked on this specific part of the webinar in my home office, which is this, which I find like kind of ironic that that's what I was working on as she's like literally screaming. There's often a constant battle between the expectations of being a mother, a wife, a daughter, caring for aging parents, or a friend, and also meeting all the expectations and being a leader at work. Juggling both can often leave us feeling like we're failing at both and just defeated. I want to make a note here that none of these things take into consideration the misogyny, gender pay gaps, sexism, sexual abuse, and racism that women also face in the workplace. We always need to pay acknowledgement to each of those things, especially if they are currently present for you. However, this is not what this webinar is covering today. I want to focus our time today offering you things that you can influence without changing the entire system so that you can create more of your own peace right now. And while the systems with which we work are a worthy cause for our time and our energy, when we're prioritizing our own well-being, we're better equipped to continue addressing systemic problems as well. All of these unique challenges play a role in how much energy we have to focus, to spend time problem solving and working without tons of other demands swirling around in our heads. And so it's important to get clear on what we're solving for in your career. And the specific thing that I want to solve for you is how to have a long career that feels manageable. That's, of course, if you want to work or need to work. During my career in advertising, I would be so often overwhelmed that I constantly thought I'll never be able to add more to my life. I felt so maxed out and at the mercy of the pace given to me by corporate America and a competitive, fast-paced environment. Before I even had children or a more balanced lifestyle, I couldn't even let myself dream about what I might have wanted. I don't want you thinking that at every turn. I don't want you making decisions based on what you think you're forced to have to accept based on your circumstances. I want you to be able to make decisions based on what you really want in your life and in your career, and know that you have the tools to weather the inevitable storms that happen in all of our lives throughout our careers, no matter our age, industry, or seniority. And the truth is that women's careers deserve to be dynamic, exactly like the span of a woman's life. We deserve to have busy and less busy periods, short and long pauses, times of complete support, turns, changes, mistakes, and at every speed of pace on our own terms. And so the problem I want to solve for you today is creating career resilience in your career. I think resilience describes this beautiful balance between endurance and flexibility to create lasting longevity. Being too focused on endurance isn't sustainable long-term. Unchecked endurance will lead to breaking or burnout, and flexibility or malleability alone lacks the structure and strength element we need to rise to challenges and lead towards opportunities for growth. And I will not sit here and act like there's a solution out there that will make everything a total breeze. I would encourage you not to listen to anyone trying to sell that to you also. It's like when the amazing Glennon Doyle says, we can do hard things. At face value, it feels empowering and gives you a boost of confidence and energy. Underneath that, subconsciously, I think is the relief that we feel at the admittance that sometimes things are hard. And that's okay. We live in a filter culture because of social media that makes everyone seem like they never sweat. But we are human, and this is real life. And real life is 50-50. It's 50% fun, happy, easy, and joyful, and 50% hard, difficult, and a struggle. Even Taylor Swift called out in her commencement speech at NYU that effortlessness is a myth. I need you to hear this. If things feel hard, you are not doing it wrong. You are a woman making magic in a world that was not made for you. Luckily for us, women are already incredibly naturally resilient. By age 85, 67% of people are women, meaning that we outlive men. Pregnant women expend the maximum amount a human body can endure for 9 months straight. And research is starting to suggest that women are faster and better suited to run long distances like ultramarathons compared to men. So let's check in again on how much resilience you feel like you have right now. So you can write it in the chat, or you can just like have your number in your own heart. But consider if 1 is no resilience and that you're constantly thinking about quitting, you're like, I'm really like on the edge here. And 10 is yes, I have all the tools I need to continue on empowered and as I want to. What number would you be? What would you rate yourself? And creating like a little bit of awareness for yourself on like where you stand in that scale. I want to talk about why resilience is so important. On an individual level, it's so important for women to build skills for the current workplace and be financially independent. So many women before us suffered in marriages or situations because of the lack of this freedom. I want to tell you a story about one of my clients, Megan. Megan came to me as she was returning from her maternity leave after her second child. And excuse me, I thought I got lost in my notes. Let me start that over. Megan came to me and she's returning from her maternity leave after her second child. Right before her mat leave, she accepted a new position as a director. When she returned to work, she had just doubled her load as a mother, going from 1 to 2 kids, and she was building her experience managing over 100 health professionals at a high-profile research-based hospital. When she told me about her role, I mean, all I could think was, okay, wow, what a badass. But she had a different story in her head. This is what she told me. I'm so burnt out and stressed. I'm overworking and thinking about work all weekend. So even when I do get the little time I have with my kids, I'm barely with them anyways. I'm giving myself 6 months, and if I can't figure this out, I'm going to transfer back to my previous role. Ladies, she was on the verge of demoting herself when she absolutely had the ability to be amazing in this new role. Through our work together, she was able to take on this different level of responsibility, create a balanced schedule, and be completely present with her children when she had the time with them, all whilst exceeding expectations at work and hitting all of her goals. This is the part that I thought I had skipped like 2 minutes ago. This is so important because our government makes a lot of decisions for us, but corporations and businesses do too. And the balance of leadership at the top is still very imbalanced. We just don't have that many women in top leadership roles yet. And to me, one of the keys in helping women thrive at work is equipping ourselves to stay in the game in a way that's sustainable with all the phases of our careers. I think with the tools that I'm going to share with you today, you will be more equipped to take on more responsibility, create the success that you want, whether that's promotions, raises, a larger team, etc., maybe a career change, and generate gravitas in your career with a sense of ease and support. And I have a surprise too that I didn't tell anyone about. because I can't help myself. I'm going to pick a name from the list of signups and give one of you a free hour of coaching. I'm looking forward to chatting with one of you soon. One of the harder parts about preparing a webinar is bringing forward the most important things that I want you to hear today, because I could probably spend months talking about and working on these things with you. And my intention is to talk less about what specifically you should do and bring to light and lean more into how you can be in your life and work that will create more resilience. So what I'm offering today goes beyond time management tools, communication styles, and self-care ideas. This is more about who you are being and how you are being with yourself as a woman who leads and a woman going to work today. And so I want to teach you about what I think are the top 3 things that will help you build resilience in your career. Number 1, quieting your inner critic. I almost added this as a bonus section, and then I moved it right up to the number 1 thing to share with you, because what is happening in your own head is so, so important in how you steer the ship of your life and your career. I need to introduce you to your inner critic. You definitely have met her, and you're probably trying to avoid her a bit, even though you also listen to her a lot. It's me again on the slide. I tried to find an old photo that wasn't like really bad, like you could tell it's old, but not like there's some bad ones in there. Okay, when I started my job in the advertising industry, when I started my job at the ad agency that employed me for the majority of the time that I lived in New York, I was coming from the Seattle market and had been working in PR. I was taking a role on the influencer marketing team in New York, which is the team that brokers deals to do social media strategies and branded content spearheaded by influencers. It's like when you see Kristin Cavallari talk about all of her cute shoes from DSW. And yes, I did choose Kristin Cavallari as the influencer because of this whole thing on the internet about her dating one of the Montana boys. One thing about me, I love pop culture. I support it. Go, Kristin. I also find it really entertaining. At the time, the industry was still fairly new, this like influencer marketing industry. And I barely executed a influencer campaign because the agency that I was at in Seattle was small and pretty locally focused. Still, I got the job. And when I did, I remember thinking how one of my colleagues actually back in Seattle would be perfect for this job. Not me, because she had a blog and was starting to do like some branded partnerships. She had more exposure and experience in this area. I also began thinking about all the ways that I wasn't ready or didn't have the client experience needed to do great in this role. I wondered if when I walked in on my first day, if they would realize they had made a mistake. I was at that special place in the process of growth and doing something new when the inner critic likes to enter from stage left with tap shoes on to perform a whole musical about how much we actually have no skills and suck very badly. Most of us, I mean, I'm guessing all of us have been there, but you know what I'm talking about. No matter how successful or confident we become, we all have this voice inside of our head or this part of ourselves that's checking in on us at best and judging us at worst. This voice is like a little alarm system to keep us safe from failure, embarrassment, rejection, abandonment, and so on. She gets really loud when we're doing something new or very visible. Unfortunately for us, this voice can also be very, very critical and sometimes downright mean. She actually needs to be convincing. She needs you to really believe that you shouldn't do the big, potentially scary thing. After coaching tons of women on their inner critics, her main messages sound a lot like this. And some of these are certainly from my own brain. You're going to embarrass yourself. Everyone's going to find out that you're not as smart as you seem. You're not ready for this. You will do more harm by going through with that than if you didn't. You are not the right person for this. Let someone else do it. Maybe I can't do it. Write me again in the chat. Or you can just like identify if you've ever heard that soundtrack. We've all kind of heard that stat about how like men are like so much more likely to just like end up in a role that they're unqualified for, where women like double check that we are 100% qualified and like perfectly ready for something. That's like related to this inner critic thing. To a lot of us, we can mistake this voice as truth or the voice of reason, right? We like it's convincing. The voice is convincing. Um, The problem isn't the inner critic herself, though. We don't need to get rid of her. The problem is believing our inner critic at face value. When we do believe her, a couple things happen. We most likely are stopped in our tracks, which would be like saying no to an opportunity. Like it would be like me. I almost said no to speaking at my alma mater. I almost like was like, maybe the timing's wrong. My sister is coming for spring break like that next day. Or in situations where saying no isn't an option, say you've been asked to present your work to the whole company or join a really high profile project, the voices can be so loud and convincing that we are seriously impaired in our ability to function and problem solve, building the case that maybe we aren't cut out for this after all. Instead of trying to completely eliminate our inner critics, which is impossible, by the way, we can work with her, and this is an important lesson about acceptance and leaning in. She's bringing to light real fears that we have and that all humans have. So here's 3 things you can do to help quiet your inner critic. The first is to get to know her. It's so important to have awareness of when your inner critic is driving the show of your internal dialogue. Get to know what she sounds like, what she always says. It's usually actually the same stuff over and over again. She's like very loud, but not that creative. It's like there's probably like 5 to 6 sentences that are always looping. And you can potentially even give her a persona, like a name and a signature outfit. I think one of my girlfriends said that hers is like Lucy or something, or like Deborah. I don't know. She has like a name so she can like speak to her. This helps us to have a bit of separation from her too. She is part of you, but not all of you. And this is a really, really important and key distinction. Secondly, validate and console her. It's important to feel the feelings of fear, validate them, and then actually console her as if she were a small girl. Modern psychology suggests that we move through difficult emotions more seamlessly when we address them head on and let ourselves really feel the emotion rather than trying to ignore their existence. Third, direct her to the back seat. When we accept that our inner critic is along for the ride, we can give her a place, which after consoling and validating her is in the passenger seat or potentially the back seat. You can say directly to her, to yourself, to this part of yourself, I see you. Thank you for bringing this up and trying to keep me safe. You can come along. You can ride in the car on this journey, but I will be driving and you will be sitting in the back seat. You're here if I need you. We're going to be safe. It's going to be okay. For the first 3 months of my new job, when I was having like my inner critic was just going crazy, and at the time I didn't really have any tools to, work with her. I borrowed words of encouragement from a card my former boss had written me, which said, "You are so smart, so well-intentioned, and so hardworking. You'll be great in New York." I repeated those 3 lines as I walked to the office every single day, which was probably like a 30-minute walk. And every time that I was asked to do something new in my new job, I repeated it so often, I can recall it from memory almost 15 years later. And it helped me console my inner critic and gently tell her that I would be moving forward regardless of her warnings. By the time I left that job, I was one of the most senior people in my department and teaching other newbies like myself how to thrive. And another like tiny side note is like, do not sleep on giving words of encouragement or writing kind notes to other women, especially if you are more senior than them. And it will like hold some weight. Like my former boss kind of like saved me with a very short but powerful note. Second up, ditching perfectionism. I think this might be my favorite one. Okay, I have a cheeky identifier for my clients. I call them AAA women, and the 3 A's stand for ambitious, type A, and a little antsy. These AAA women tend to be high performers, overworkers, and perfectionists. Feeling the pressure is the name of our game. And you might be one of these AAA women. Here's a story about my client, Maggie, who is the head of the strategy department at a very cool New York City ad agency. She was about 6 months into this new role and wanted to revamp the process with her team, the strategy team, and how they collaborated with the creative team, especially when they were presenting new work or doing new business pitches. She spent about 3 months thinking about creating the new process in a vacuum just with herself. And have you ever like found yourself in that predicament where like you need to work on something that maybe isn't completely urgent, but very important nonetheless? Maggie felt an insurmountable amount of pressure to create and then present a kick-ass, totally fresh and new, blow her boss's minds, new process. Of course, she froze and procrastinated. Perfectionism seems like a good idea. We think that it will protect us from looking stupid or like a fraud. We think that perfectionism will be the thing that helps us fast track our careers, help us get it right, and stand out as superstars in our industries. Here's the thing though. So many high achieving and high performing women identify as perfectionists and think of it as an asset. And yet so many men have the leadership positions in our companies. It's time to admit that it's not working for us. Perfectionism is a protection mechanism that actually is voiced by that pesky inner critic we talked about before. Perfectionism creates pressure around being the best and being seen as the best. And what this does is that anytime you experience any kind of doubt or face any uncertainty, which is all the time at work, by the way, the pressure will freeze you in your tracks. And there's also some hidden negatives of committing to perfectionist actions. Rachel, another client who is a marketing exec at a huge home decor company, came to me feeling frustrated that she hadn't been promoted and even felt that she had been passed over for one. After more investigation, she shared how annoying it was that she always had to fix other people's work. She had been spending half of her day organizing product images in a document because it came to her unfinished, and she felt the pressure of the like deadlines and having things be accurate. She told me nonchalantly one day, I'm faster and better at it. And when I review it from my colleague, it's always wrong. So I just do it. That might sound really familiar to a lot of you. Even though it seems noble of Rachel, this work was way below her skill level, but she kept doing it because she wanted to be a team player. She thought that's what you should do. Or like, I'm just faster. So it's like better somehow. Unfortunately, her boss never recognized this extra effort as promotion worthy because it's like really low value work. And it was sucking up very valuable time that could have been used to work on higher value projects that would have earned a promotion. And this happens at every level, by the way. Sometimes being really great at everything doesn't serve us long term. And it's not about being bad at some things, it's about picking and choosing. We'll kind of get to that a little bit more later. We live and work in a performative productivity culture that rewards task mastering, crushing to-do list, and taking lots of actions. To move beyond that, we have to take a step back, make sure we're doing the work where we're creating the most value and creating the space to do it well. So here's 3 things you can do to ditch perfectionism. First up, the 85% rule. If you tell a runner to run a race at 85% of their max speed, they will actually run faster than if you tell them to run at 100%. Why? Because they are relaxed. When you're trying your absolute hardest, you tense up, you become rigid and more easily breakable. When you pull a little bit back from your top effort, you're relaxed. When you're relaxed, you can think more clearly, problem solve in the moment, and embrace the flexibility to be able to make changes quickly. For Maggie, embracing the 85% rule, or how I put it that day in our coaching session, was to do her absolute crappiest first draft of this process and then get feedback and collaborate with her team. It meant pulling back from needing to do it all herself and execute that perfectly. When she took the pressure off, her initial draft was done in a week. And reminder, it took her 3 months to get started when she was in perfection mode. And the shocker is the work that she did in a week was not bad work. And for Rachel, she began sending back unfinished and incorrect work to her colleagues to fix themselves. She course corrected and earned the promotion and 20% raise that she deserved. We've been taught since the age of 5 that getting an A is the ultimate goal. Sometimes giving yourself an out and doing what the life coach school calls B- work, there's some magic in this, so listen up, is the thing that releases the pressure valve and allows you to just get started, or to release the need to take on the whole project and have it be perfect. And here's the catch. When people like you do B- work, or 85%, which is a B in grade school, and I know y'all know and remember the grade scale because I do, and I know that it's defined so much of my life way past the time that I was being graded on that scale. It's never actually B- out there in the world. It always passes as much higher quality. And so it goes to show that always trying to get an A is a perfectionist mindset related to how it feels to get an A. And the way that it usually feels to get an A feels like a lot of effort. So when you care about something, you effort a lot. But we now know that when we effort a lot as adult women with lots of conflicting demands, we actually get a lower quality output. So remember the 85% rule. 2, setting boundaries. A funny thing happened when I stopped going to every single meeting I was asked to go to. I thought going to every meeting was me being a great employee. When I stopped, though, all of my outputs got so much better. And this is an example that happened not just with meetings, but all of my work. Instead of assuming of myself that I could do it all, I prioritized the most important things, which often were not meetings, got those priority things done, and then left the office on time. Leaving on time and resting was the net positive cycle I needed to have the mental fortitude and discernment to do things, to do this again the next day and consistently provide really high quality work, which is actually what my boss cared about, not that I was checking every single performative box. No one is looking out for your schedule. And so when your schedule goes off the rails, you are the one who has to decide where the guardrails are and rate the train. We're often scared to say no for fear of missing an opportunity, a big break, or honestly just disappointing someone. And it's important. We need to be clear. It's important to discern these big moments in our careers. But we need to also balance how often we're saying yes so that it doesn't become an unconscious habit. Client Rachel unconsciously became a yes woman when she took on other people's work. And her colleagues, non-maliciously, by the way, came to expect her to fix things. Because, like, if someone else is going to fix it, like, why would I? And so the mistakes and the favors kept coming to her. In this way, getting comfortable saying no is a superpower and could be like the thing in the way of a promotion or a raise for you. For women, it's never a question of ability. In pretty much all cases, women will find a way to get it done. The question we need to start answering more clearly is about capacity, meaning that just because you can't do it, meaning just because you can do it doesn't mean that you should. You are your capacity conductor, keeping your train on your rails. And you always have options when there are conflicting priorities. You can say no without any explanation. You can say no, and here's why. And you can say things like, I'd be open to adding that to my list or to my, things or like tasks that I'm responsible for, here's what I won't be able to do if I say yes to that. Or here's what will get delayed if I say yes to that. Or here's something that I said I was going to get done this week, but that's going to have to be done next week if I say yes to this right now. And then are you okay with that? Like the amount of things on your plate is, it's important to start thinking of it as a negotiation. Saying no doesn't have to be mean or dismissive. Start thinking of saying no and setting boundaries as the vehicle with which you offer your very best work to your team or your family. Third, asking for and accepting help. While asking for help seems like an easy thing to do, many of us don't. And so we have to look at what's in the way. And I think one of the biggest obstacles to asking for help is feeling guilty. Have you ever felt like if you ask a colleague to do something, then you're not a team player? If you delegate too much, then everyone will slowly start to hate you. Shame that you don't already know how to do a task, that you're lazy or incapable if you don't do it yourself, that you're too uppity or rude if you ask someone else to do something that you don't like doing or just don't want to do. Feel bad about leaving your child with someone else, whether you're paying the child care or not. My own mom once made a comment about modern mothers not being able to survive very long solo with their children while their husbands took the day to go hunting. This was not directed at me specifically, but I think that it's comments like these that have us second guessing, taking a break, or unabashedly asking for help. Like there's this unwritten rule that women should be able to juggle it all. And I'll let you in on a little secret. I've come a long way in my delegation and receiving help skills. And yet, I sometimes still feel the little pang of discomfort when I ask my husband to watch his own child, our daughter. And don't get me wrong, I still ask all the time because I decided I would rather feel whatever outdated feeling that is than not get the support that I need. The guilt can also have us actually denying help when it's offered. I've turned down something as little as carrying a bag to my car with a seemingly flippant, "It's okay, I got it." And once again, I want to remind you that it's never about ability, but about capacity or just wanting a little support. We have to remember that while we're all beyond superhero status, I also need you to accept your humanness and that we have limited energy and time, by the way. And yeah, like time, there's only like so many hours in the day. These things are finite. And so we have to choose what we're doing in that time rather than being like paralyzed by the list of things. And trust me, I wish we could do something to keep going 24 hours a day. But then we'd all just have longer to-do lists. I promise you, we would have the exact same pattern that we have now, which is not figuring out what's most important or what do we want to do most in the time that is available right now. And we would just make a longer list. So let's keep sleeping through the night and let's ask for help. And so I encourage you to begin thinking of yourself as the director of your life. It's your job to know what needs to get done, but you don't actually have to do all of those things yourself. Every successful woman I know is not doing it solo, whether that's visible or not. Shonda Rhimes, head writer for huge TV shows like Grey's Anatomy, Scandal, and Bridgerton, has an entire chapter in her best-selling book called Year of Yes, dedicated to her family's nanny to help dispel the idea that successful women are doing it all themselves. So ask for help as often as you can. And yes, I am considering that sometimes asking for help costs money, giving directions, and even feeling large amounts of discomfort and maybe even a little judgment from your own mom. My mom's wonderful, by the way, but it's just that's how that's her own view about it. And this is whether you're delegating at work or hiring a babysitter. If you want to go far, go together and say thank you often. Okay, our third and final thing, rebounding well. Of all the women I've helped, the issue is never job and competency, meaning that it's never about women not knowing how to do their jobs well. The thing that will put a woman's career in a holding pattern is fearing mistakes excessive second guessing, which leads to eroding trust in self. Let's take a look at the Queen of Queens, Beyonce. Her album comes out, the new Cowboy Carter comes out in 2 days. If you don't know, like, where are you? I'm very excited. As you might know, in 2023, Beyonce broke a record for winning the most Grammys of any person in history, 32 Grammys. Holy shit. What probably less people know is that Beyonce is also at the top of the list for the most nominations. She's been nominated 88 times, which is the most noms as well. A record shared with her husband Jay-Z and Kanye West. This means that she had to lose 56 times in order to win the most. Jay-Z and Kanye have lost more than her, each losing 64 times. But the point here is that the biggest winners are also the biggest losers. Our lesson to take from Queen Bee is to get comfortable losing, making mistakes, and missing the mark in order to win. No one really knows what they're doing. Instead of trying not to get it wrong, think about how you want to get it right. Thinking that someone else has the right way will always have you looking outward to try to find an answer. Because of our perfectionist tendencies, we end up making decisions from a loss aversion mindset. We're playing not to lose instead of playing to win. Just like Beyonce, if she was trying to avoid 56 losses, she would never have the most Grammys in the history of Grammys. So let's talk about how to solve it. The first one, creating a new relationship with taking risks. And this is of understanding the life cycle of learning. We've been led to believe that we need to know all the answers immediately. And because of that, we avoid the real process of learning. We're scared to learn because what is required in learning is making mistakes. So we need to begin knowing that mistakes are what lead to successes. Second, you must make mistakes. And I'm not talking about reckless mistakes. I'm talking about measured risks. In fact, you can't avoid making some mistakes or taking some risks at all. So we need to learn how to make helpful mistakes. On the precipice of making mistakes, most women freeze and at best pause. Instead, it's a lot easier to make mistakes when we're aiming for helpful mistakes and then rebound effectively. So go in knowing the risk that you're taking, why you're taking the risk, and know what could be gained or what might be missed. And then third, in the game of work and life, you're less likely to create irreparable damages with the mistake, but in the rebound. That's not what you do or what happens, but how you handle it. So how do we recover from mistakes or failures? And that specifically is making sure we're learning, analyzing what went wrong, and putting in place a process or a plan to help remedy the mistake in the future. Instead of winning or losing, shift your mindset to winning or learning. Something else to take from Beyonce before we wrap up this section, there are many Grammys that Beyonce should have won in my non-musical professional opinion, and probably the opinion of many others. One specific example that will never leave my heart is when she didn't win Album of the Year for the Lemonade album. That one stung deep. And in this case, Beyonce didn't need to analyze what was wrong with Lemonade, and the answer, nothing. She did have a choice in how she would respond. And all I've seen her do since is keep making music, keep lifting up people and causes that matter to her, and keep making money and building her empire. So sometimes something in our very objective world, like Grammys or your boss's opinion, will be deemed a failure or a loss, and you won't get the recognition that you deserve. And that's when you get to decide what to do. And to that, I say, keep going. Imagine working with these 3 tools in your pockets, having a quiet, focused mind and not constantly battling yourself and this invisible judgy person on your shoulder. Imagine knowing how to speak to your inner critic and calm her down so you can keep driving down the road that you envision for yourself. Imagine ditching perfectionism and releasing the pressure valve that has you running at 100% all the time, setting boundaries for yourself to empower others and to create your best work. and asking for help no matter how you might be perceived, giving you energy and time abundance. Imagine having the freedom to take risks and try new things, know exactly how and what to learn from them if they don't work, and not letting mistakes have the power to stop you or get you down. Imagine feeling like I can keep going. When you think about your career, instead of hanging by a string and wondering when the last thread is going to break, or constantly um, weighing whether working is worth it anymore and whether you should just quit. Imagine knowing deep in your bones that you can have a hugely successful career without paying for it in personal peace. The generations before us have opened so many doors, broken many glass ceilings, and helped women make so much progress. In order to lift ourselves to the next level, we must do things differently than they did. And I'm here to help. Please use me as a resource. You can directly reply to any email I send you or find me on Instagram or LinkedIn. I'm also available as a private one-to-one coach for speaking opportunities, group workshops, offsites, and coaching for organizations. I would love to actually be put in touch with your HR or people teams wherever you work, if you're not already that person. I would also love to invite you to book a consult with me, especially if any part of this resonates with you and you're tired of feeling like you're on a hamster wheel, wondering how you'll ever do it all, or want to advance your career with a promotion or a raise, but feel like you'll have to sell your soul to do it. This is such an honor. Thank you for listening and bringing your A game wherever you are working. It's an active revolution every time you wake up and go to work as a woman in America. We were not always allowed this right. And as we've seen in the last year, our rights are not guaranteed, even when we've made so much progress. It's up to us to continue marching forward, showing up, and putting ourselves into leadership positions where we can make the decisions and preserve them. And I know I keep saying it. I'm feeling really honored and lucky to be marching alongside each of you in this last hour. And I deeply hope that it isn't the last time. Please don't be a stranger. Thank you so much. I'm going to pull this slide up, and for a moment, everyone should have my email and probably my Instagram, but snag it really quick. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. We have just a couple minutes for questions if there are any. Write them in the chat. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. If anyone needs an email or my contact info, drop it in the chat.